kid? Is it
Yeah.
a family thing? Or how'd you get started?
It's a wild story. I mean, I grew up my whole life, you know, growing up in Maryland doing, like, I'm a first generation Indian American. So like a lot of us growing up, you know, you're not going to be a musician, you know, as a career, but you definitely are encouraged to learn the arts. That was a big part of our upbringing. But, you know, my path was originally going to be either a doctor or a lawyer or a computer scientist or an engineer, typical Indian kind of kid growing up on the East Coast. And so I was just doing it as a hobby. I grew up always playing music, playing violin. I had violin, you know, and I loved Michael Jackson growing up, and I was always listening to him and singing his songs like, she was more like a beauty queen. You know, I would like kind of bust out all the time, and everyone's like, oh, he's very musical. We should encourage more music. So I did it in school and all that. But when I went to college, I was going there to be a doctor or a lawyer. I did pre-med, I did pre-law, neurobiology, physiology, criminology, criminal justice. And I was just like up in the school mix, you know, focused on that. Music was always just in my mind a hobby because I didn't grow up knowing you could even do music as a career. It was always just those famous people on TV. But, you know, when I was in college, I started singing in a cappella groups. I don't know if you guys heard of that. It's like, it's all just voices, right? Like Boys to Men, and but like groups like that, R&B groups. And that's when I started getting the bug of like, oh, this could be something I do, you know, for real. You know, when I graduated college, I finished, you know, made my parents happy. I finished my degrees. I wanted to at least complete what I started. It felt good to complete, but at the same time, I was like, you know, I think my path is a little bit different. Like, I feel like I want to be an artist. So I ended up driving out to Los Angeles saying, you know, hey, I'm going to take the dream. I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to drive out there just with my computer and my guitar and my violin and my piano. And I drove out across country just with no idea. I didn't know anybody. And then, I got out there and then just kind of started networking and figuring it out.
So well, first off, what made you go to LA? Because you could have went to New York. You could have went to, I don't know, maybe Chicago. You could have went to you could have went to Atlanta. What made you go to LA?
Well, yeah, actually, funny you mentioned New York. There was a point where I did go back and forth to New York later. What made me go to LA was I visited a friend at one point who was out here. After I graduated, I visited LA just to check it out because I had a friend who was, you know, I had one friend who had moved out like earlier who was like doing the acting thing. And I didn't know anybody else. I didn't know anything about the music industry, none of that. But I checked it out and I just loved like the lifestyle, the weather. There was mountains everywhere. And I'm really into nature. I grew up like really into nature, like walking barefoot and, you know, sun gazing and, you know, hiking, kind of like almost like Mowgli from the Jungle Book. I was always like a kind of a wild animal kid. And so when I got to Los Angeles and I saw as a visitor, I was like, this is amazing. You can jump in the ocean and go hiking the same day. You know, the fact that they had a mountain I could climb and, you know, work up a, you know, little, you know, I'm into fitness. I could get like a workout and then jump in the ocean and cool off. Felt like there wasn't really too many places like that also had the entertainment industry. So it was kind of like a balance between the weather and the lifestyle, and then also knowing that there was a ton of record labels, there was acting opportunities and all that.
So what's the music scene? I mean, what was the music scene like when you got there as far as networking and meeting people? What was that like, meeting people?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was all about just, you know, I'm motivated. I'm a hungry dude. I'm motivated. When I see a goal, I just kind of go for it. And so like my goal was to come out to LA and figure it out, like solving a puzzle, like almost like just like, you know, like riddles. I grew up doing, again, a lot of math and science and all the pre-med. So my brain was always into problem solving. And so I thought of, you know, the music industry is the same thing. Let's figure out where the people are. Let's figure out where they hang out. Let's figure out the networking. And I was doing crazy hustling type stuff where I was like on the street with my violin, like doing like a beatbox violin groove or something. And then I'd be singing and like, you know, people were coming by and I was doing it in front of Capitol Records. So I started doing that like every day in front of the record label, just on the stairs, you know, and people were walking by and there, you know, at some point, like a week later, couple people noticed me. They're like, hey, we've been, you know, what's your deal? You know, some people ask me like, what's your deal? I've been seeing you here for like, you know, the last week. And I was like, hey, I'm new to town. DPAK, I just got to town. I drove across here from Maryland. I'm just trying to meet people and get into the business. And they were like, I like your energy. Come on upstairs. I ended up walking into the record label like the first week I was in town. And then they're like, what call can you do? I was like, I was just showing them I can play violin, I can sing, I can do this. So I started getting hired for like little studio gigs, like record label gigs, like, yo, we need some background vocals on this track by Gomez, which is like this European band signed to Virgin Records. We need some violin on this. And it kind of got me in the mix. So that was like one thing I did. Another thing I did was like going on Craigslist and I was just clicking refresh on the gigs section. There's a section called gigs. And I was just clicking refresh over and over again until like something that, you know, relevant came up. And I would be like, ooh, that's a good one. So I ended up finding this one thing which was like an acting role for a violinist, you know, for a movie. And it ended up being this movie called First Daughter with Michael Keaton and Katie Holmes. And I clicked on the button and I submitted. And the guy was like, you know, he called me right away. He's like, you know, I just submitted that 10 seconds ago. And I told him the story. And I was like, I've been clicking refresh on here for like 3 hours straight. And he was like, that's crazy. I've never heard of that. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm motivated. He's like, dude, I like your, again, same thing. I like your energy. I like your motivation. So I ended up getting the gig just because I think he just liked that I was like, kind of like excited or something. I don't know. So I think like that was my experience, was just like being hungry, doing stuff that other people weren't doing, being outlandish, being unreasonable, showing up in places, walking in backstage, trying to sneak past security and meet people in the green rooms. And I think a lot of that hustle mentality, you know, worked out to my success, because I ended up getting acting roles like on Modern Family. I got a co-starring role on the show Modern Family, like a pretty big show on ABC. I booked a bunch of national commercials. I got an agent and a manager, did some acting. But after a while, I think I was like realizing that acting was more of like a side thing, that music was really where my, you know, my wheelhouse is, and I feel like more connected to it. So I couldn't do all of it at the same time. At some point, you got to kind of like start choosing your time wisely. And I think a lot of the acting was starting to dilute the music. So I just like kind of I did 3 national commercials as an actor, and it was good. But then I was like, I got to really buckle down and focus on music. So I just got into that and started producing. I built a studio out here. I started like playing live shows, doing open mics. I built a band after a while, built a pretty big following in Los Angeles with a band called The Bolt. Got several record deals over the years now. In the last 10 years, got a couple that, you know, kind of went somewhere and then didn't kind of blow up. So I think there's a little more to it, which I'm now focusing on with the newest project. I also got a gig with Disney at one point where I produced 45 songs for a Disney show. That was pretty good. That got me a lot of PR and press, and got a pretty big credit doing that now. That's online, and performed with Rihanna, Jason Mraz, you know, kind of like it just ended up meeting a lot of people, and just through networking and, you know, playing shows and everything. As you know, once you kind of in there and you start knowing people, it starts snowballing into more things. Like, oh, you did this. That's, you know, I did this movie that led to another movie, which led to Disney, for example. But it's like all these, it's like the little things first. Once they start adding up, it starts snowballing, you know? Yeah.
So what's your style of music? What would you call it anyway?
That's always the tough question for me. Now I'm honing in on a specific style for my newest project. I've had, when my first band that I had, The Bolt, that was like 10 years ago, that one was doing its first record deal. That's more like old school, not old school, it's more like rock, like alternative rock. And then I did another project that was all disco funk, that was almost like Michael Jackson, disco dance, like electronic. I had that one, was 2 projects ago. And that was like a little bit more of like the pop funk, Michael Jackson, The Weeknd. And then my last project before the current one is called Robot Nature. That was in 2020 when the lockdowns happened. We had our show, all the shows, tours got canceled that year. We were kind of blowing up that year. We had like Jimmy Kimmel slated for like the end of the year. We had a couple big stadium shows, and that one was like electro pop, almost like 21 Pilots, Imagine Dragons. And that's kind of closer to where I'm at now, where I'm kind of bridging the pop rock, electro pop, indie rock, alternative rock kind of mode, because I'm still like, I still have that pop Michael Jackson energy, but it's still, I kind of like the sound of like more like alt, like guitars and electric violin. So I'm kind of blending a unique sound together. It's still kind of got an Imagine Dragons influence, maybe 21 Pilots, maybe Coldplay, maybe like Radiohead, but still has a little bit of that Weeknd, Michael Jackson flavor in there. So that had to, if I had to break it down, and it's a little bit more of a solo project now, but now I'm starting to pull in other special guests and other singers onto the project, but it's still going to be more of a solo project. The other ones are more like bands. You know, this one's more like Justin Timberlake, for example. Like, he's a solo artist, but he's got a band live, but it's still Justin Timberlake. So like that, it'll be more like DPAK, and then I'll have special guests on stage.
How did you come up with the name? Did you always have this name, or how did you come up with the name? Is it unique, or?
Yeah, so my name DPAK, if you spell it the Indian way, it's actually a common Indian name. There's a famous philosopher and a doctor and a meditation teacher called Deepak Chopra. He's a very famous one. He works with like Oprah and stuff like that. So that name's not uncommon in India. So that was my birth name. That's what my parents' name, and it's spelled D-E-E-P-A-K. And it's actually funny. You guys can look it up on Google. If you look up the other Deepak, because when I first came to LA, everyone knew who Deepak Chopra was. So I would say, hey, they'd be like, what's your name? I'd be like, oh, my name's Deepak. And everyone would be like, you mean like Deepak Chopra? And I'd be like, no, I'm the other Deepak. And I would kept on saying that. And at some point, my boy's like, you should just get theotherDPAK.com. It was a joke, but I ended up doing it. And it ended up becoming like kind of viral. Like if you look it up now, The Other DPAK, it's all over Google, and it ended up becoming like my moniker. I got the website. I started putting myself as The Other DPAK for years, but now I shifted away from that. I think it served its purpose. And I was like, I'm really into spirituality. I have the Indian background. I was doing a lot of yoga, meditation, and breathing, so it made sense to be The Other DPAK, like a younger version that's getting into the spirituality and all that. But I just getting more serious as an artist. Like the Other DPAK isn't like, it can't be that, it can't go that far as a serious name. It's kind of cute, it's funny. But I think now making it more like, I'm really also into sci-fi. I grew up really into Star Wars and things like that, and just making my name all caps, getting rid of the E's became like it really felt like I was a little bit more like a sci-fi character, because I really relate to that. And so it's like, it feels like almost like an alter ego of mine, DPAK, all caps, which is kind of like my robot, android persona or something like that, if you will. Yeah.
At what point did you say, hey, I can do this? I mean, what gave you the confidence to say, man, I can do this? Was it a moment or a combination of things? When was it?
It was different moments. I think, like I was saying, in college, when I was doing my pre-med and my pre-law, I was in school taking all these classes, but I was doing the a cappella group, and I also was a lead. I ended up starting a funk band in college, and I was a leader of that band, lead singer and electric violinist. And I think there was moments then that that's the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that, is like, it was the feeling of like, I'm on stage, I'm the lead singer of this a cappella group, and I'm the lead singer of this band, and I'm getting positive feedback, like the audience is feeling good, I'm feeling good. It felt like an exchange of energy, like almost like a circle, like Tesla. I like to get into like a lot of the free energy kind of like science fiction, the science, like not the science fiction, the science, and free energy is like an exchange of energy. And it felt like, I'm singing and the audience is like giving me joy back. And it felt like there was like a connection. Like it's not like I'm on stage and they're down here. It's almost like we're all one. It felt like we're all one, like we're unified in this energy field of positivity. And I felt like that was the feeling of like, I like this feeling. I could be a doctor, I could help people for sure, one-on-one, or I could be a lawyer, I can help people. But something about music felt like I could help millions of people and inspire that, the way I was inspired growing up. I was inspired by like Michael Jackson and Coldplay and Radiohead and people like that. When I listen to their music, I listen to Bob Marley, I listen to Pink Floyd, or, all kinds of genres, like, Biggie Smalls, Tupac, Outkast. Like, I get inspired by that. And I'm like, if I could give that to people too, when I grow up, that would be a good feeling, a gift. And I wanted to make, and that's why I relate to Bob Marley. Like, that's not my style or sound, but I like his message. Same with Michael Jackson, because their message was like bigger than the music. It's not, there's more like a movement, like Michael Jackson has We Are the World, Heal the World. Bob Marley, like One Love. Those are bigger than just like, oh, I'm gonna write a cool song for partying. No, they're like, hey, we want to help people. We want to heal the world. We want to unify people. We want to end the divide in politics. And that's kind of what motivated me. And that's where I'm at now. And that's why this new song that's coming out, that song of mine that's coming out, Together We Rise, on October 17th. It's called Together We Rise. It's our time. It's about unifying. It's like more of the song being a movement, and me just being, the song being bigger than the artist. It's not my song. It's the world's song. And I just get to be the one to share it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The reason why I asked that, because, it's one thing to, have in your mind that, hey, I'm going to say this and do this when I get on that stage. But when I was 10 years old, when I got on that stage for the first time, I froze.
Right.
for like 30 seconds. And then some lady in the audience was like, take your time. And that's when I came out of the shell and started talking.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. Like, we, at the end of the day, like, the only thing that comes up is our own fear of ourselves and how we're going to be perceived by others. And that's been a challenge for me. Like, I grew up bullied. I grew up not accepted. I was a first generation Indian growing up in Maryland, where there was I was like the only Indian kid. And so I didn't know where to fit. There's white kids and there's black kids. And like, I'm not quite white. I'm not quite black. I'm feeling, what I'm saying? It was a feeling of like not knowing where I fit. And like, that was always kind of like a big challenge. So there was a lot of nervousness of me becoming a person on stage. But I think, again, like you were even saying with your experience of just going through it, facing the fear and freezing. Like when I got to college and I started going through that and feeling the feeling of the audience and the joy, that kind of made my nervousness go away of like, oh no, this isn't like a separate thing, or they're not just watching me. I'm not on some pedestal. I'm not something like you're on. We're all one. We're all together. We're like we're in the living room. It's like family. So like when I'm on stage now, it feels like I'm with my people, you know, like even if the audience is big, and I've been on stage for like in front of millions of people, tens of thousands of people. I've been on stage on stadiums, you know, like it still feels like I'm in the living